Democratic State Senator and now nominee for Texas Attorney General Nathan Johnson of Dallas. Thank you so much. Welcome back to Ion Politics and congratulations on your win in the primary runoff.
Thank you and good morning, Jack. It's a good place to be right now.
So, to what do you attribute your sizable margin of victory over former mayor of Galveston, Joe Jaworski? And what was it about your message that you think really resonated with Democratic primary voters?
I think it's that it was positive, Jack. We're in such a horrifically toxic political environment. I chose to run a campaign all about what we can do, how we can win in November, and how we can get good things done in office. You know, there's a contrast with the Republican opponents, but I really think people are hungry to believe that we can get something done, and that's really the message that I was sending. And it's very gratifying to see this outcome and the response that we've seen around the state to that message, because I'm very sincere about it.
And now we know you are going up against a fellow state senator, Republican Mays Middleton, who you know. He's from Galveston. And so now I'm wondering, as you pivot towards November, the general election, what is your message to Texas voters?
It's that the Attorney General's office is intended to be one of the most powerful, benevolent agencies that the framers ever created. And that it has, to our great disadvantage over the past 10 years, and it to shamefully been transformed into little more than a partisan hack tool, a propaganda machine for a faction of a party that is not only doing great damage, it's leaving undone the good work that the office is supposed to do. I think we're going to win this election, and I think we're going to do it by reminding Democrats of the importance of the office and how powerfully good this office can be under the right leadership. But not just that, Jack. I think we're going to win by a healthy margin, because we're going to see independent voters, undecided voters who want to see an attorney general's office that works for them. That is there to enforce market rules of competition so prices come down, don't go up. That's there to work with, not against, district attorneys so our streets are safer. That investigates and prosecutes corruption rather than participating in it. I don't think that's going to be such a partisan pitch. I think it's going to be a bipartisan and a nonpartisan pitch. You will see Republican crossover from a disaffected Republican swath of the population, a huge swath that is absolutely dismayed. You know, Jack, I think the story that the whole country is missing right now is that Ken Paxton was not the only person elected yesterday on the Republican side. On that slate, you've got Beau French, Don Huffines, Mays Middleton, Ken Paxton, all in kind of a putrid swamp that has been nurtured over the years by Dan Patrick and Greg Abbott and Donald Trump. And what's coming into being on that side right now, what's coming into their prospective leadership positions, are people who are not interested in governing. They're interested in power. They're interested in keeping their power and helping their friends. And the Attorney General's office, above all other offices, is to make sure that we do not have people with control over the levers of government making it work for a select, oppressive few people. And that is going to draw a lot of votes from a lot of people.
I was going to ask you about that because we saw in the primary and in the primary runoff on the Republican side, Middleton campaigned as MAGA Mays Middleton. That certainly helped him get a statewide name recognition. And he also said his top priority is to defeat the left. And so it's, you know, you talked a little bit about your priorities and making it more independent and nonpartisan. Why do you believe that's the right way to go?
Because I believe very much in the roles of individual offices and the separate roles of branches of government. I believe in the way the Attorney General's office was conceived. It was not intended to be a political hack machine. It was intended to actually keep everybody in their lanes, to ensure that there is not an abuse of power. And you really can't do that if you have a hyper-partisan bent the way Mays Middleton has. His entire tenure in office has all been about controlling other people, imposing his religious visions on people, imposing his business vision on people, imposing his partisan vision on people. And the Attorney General's office was created by Texas framers who trusted power in nobody. Right. And so if you're just cheering for the partisan team, the Republican president or the Democratic president, you're not fulfilling the obligations of the office. And on a much more positive side, with a more benevolent view of government that seems to be missing on the Republican side, is that we elect people and we have agencies, we have a government to do things for us, to make life livable, to make it possible to lead a good life. And if your only bent is on destroying it, you also are not doing your job. So the Attorney General's office, in addition to being a check and a balance on the abuse of power, is there to facilitate the proper functioning of government. You advise agencies on the powers that they have under the law. You advise the governor, you advise the lieutenant governor, you advise the legislature, you issue opinions, you talk to corporations about what their lanes are, what is permissible and what is not permissible, what it means to have competitive environment and comply with the law. You're really setting up the free throw line and the out of bounds lines and the 3-point line. All the where are the places that I can play and where are the places that I can't play? Once we set up the rules, markets will function well, political machinery will function well, but everybody needs to know where those lines are. And the Attorney General very much is charged with that responsibility, and it's not partisan.
And my other question to you is, going forward, if you are to win in November and there are still, Republican statewide office holders, let's just say for argument's sake, you got Governor Abbott.
Hypothetically, there may be one still.
What's that?
Hypothetically, there might actually be a Republican statewide office holder come November. It could happen.
Well, we'll find out. So that being the case, right, then we would see a divided state government on statewides if you were to win in November. Mm-hmm. And so talk to me a little bit about, keeping Republicans in check. And if you win, President Trump will still be in office for a couple of years. Might we see the state of Texas, you and your office, filing suit against the Trump administration?
Extremely likely that you would see me in my office suing the Trump administration. It is not a goal of mine. I have more productive things to do than to sue the federal government for breaking the law. But Trump seems to have made it policy to ignore the law, to trample on rights, to actually trample on states' rights. I can't imagine that he's going to have an epiphany in November and decide to start complying with the Administrative Procedures Act and respecting the Constitution and the separation of powers and principles of federalism. I just don't see it happening, and that's going to call upon me to act in some degree in coordination with many good attorneys general across the country, most of them Democrats, but also Republican attorneys general who have sued the Trump administration when they illegally impound money that have been appropriated to the state, when they wipe out whole agencies and programs and they violate contracts. I think I'll have to spend a lot of time suing the Trump administration. My hope is that there's going to be such a political drumming for the abuses of power that unchecked concentration on the Republican side has spawned, that they'll get the signal and they'll roll it back. And the reason I'm hopeful about that, Jack, is when I won my Senate seat in 2018, and it was I didn't think it was an upset, but it was an upset. And across the state, Democrats took a lot of offices. The following legislative session at the state level was one of the more productive in recent memory. Republicans and Democrats did serious work that session because Republicans were penalized for the lunacy of the prior session. My big hope is that if we're faced with a divided government as a result of these November elections, is that I can spend less of my time suing the federal government, less of my time trying to keep Republicans in check, and more of my time trying to do something that you do have to do and you learn to do as an effective legislator, and that is forging coalitions to get serious work done. I'm not running for this office just so I can be fighting all the time. I'm going to have to fight a lot. But there is a productive element to government that I think we owe it to the public, whatever office you're in. It's why I thought it was important to pass legislation. I've passed 135 bills as a Democrat in a Republican-controlled legislature. It's not because I sold out to them. I fought with them all the time. It's because a lot of the work that we have to do isn't about the fight. So if I'm doing my job well, we can stop a lot of fights before they start and get people to focus on the serious work of government.
We will leave it there. Democratic nominee for Texas Attorney General Nathan Johnson of Dallas. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jack. Good to see you.
Good to see you. We appreciate it.